If you had an emotionally distant father, this may feel familiar. You grew up in a home where nothing was obviously wrong. There was food on the table, routines were followed, life looked stable from the outside. And yet, something always felt slightly out of reach. You may remember your father being physically present. He went to work. He came home. He did what was expected. But emotionally, he felt far away. Not cruel, not abusive, just unavailable. If you try to explain this to others, it often sounds small, almost ungrateful. So you learn not to explain it at all. And maybe that is why this feels familiar. You might still say your childhood was fine. Nothing dramatic happened. There are no clear stories to point to. You were not yelled at constantly. You were not neglected in obvious ways. You were not unsafe. And yet, you learned early on that certain parts of you should stay quiet. You learned that emotions were something you handled on your own, that asking for comfort felt unnecessary, or awkward, or pointless. Your father may have been practical, responsible, focused on providing. He may have shown care through actions, not words, through duty, not presence. And because of that, you learned to adapt. You did not rebel. You did not demand attention. You did not create problems. You became easy. You learned to read the room, to sense when it was not the right time to speak, to hold things in. Small moments added up. You may remember wanting to share something important, a thought, a feeling, a fear, and being met with silence or distraction or a quick solution instead of understanding. You learned that emotions slowed things down, so you stopped bringing them forward. There were no big scenes, no dramatic rejection, just a quiet pattern of emotional distance. Over time, your nervous system learned something very specific. It learned that closeness was unreliable, that emotional connection was not something to expect, that self-containment was safer. So you became good at managing yourself. You figured things out alone. You handled disappointment quietly. You learned not to lean. From the outside, you looked mature, independent, strong. Inside, you were simply adapting. When a child reaches for emotional connection and finds no response, the body learns before the mind does. It learns to lower expectations, to keep feelings small, to stay composed. Not because the child is weak, but because the child is smart. Emotional distance shapes you slowly, like growing up in a house that is always a little cold. You do not notice it at first. You just put on extra layers. You stop expecting warmth. As you grew older, this pattern followed you quietly. You may now be someone who appears calm in most situations, rarely overwhelmed, rarely expressive. People might describe you as grounded, low drama, reliable. But inside, emotions feel muted, distant, hard to access. You may struggle to name what you feel, not because you feel nothing, but because you learn not to look too closely. Asking for help feels uncomfortable, even when you need it. You may prefer handling things alone, even when it is exhausting. Not because you do not trust people, but because relying on others never felt natural. In relationships, you might feel present but not fully connected. You care, but from a distance. You show up, but something holds back. Closeness can feel unfamiliar. Intimacy can feel slightly unsafe. Not threatening, just tiring. You may notice that you are good at being there for others, listening, supporting, holding space. But when it comes to your own needs, words disappear. You might feel a quiet sense of loneliness, even when you are not alone. A feeling that something is missing, but you cannot explain what. This is not because something is wrong with you. It is because emotional absence teaches you to survive without connection. When a father is emotionally distant, the child does not think, "My father cannot meet me." The child thinks, "I should not need so much." So you adapted by becoming less expressive, less needy, less visible. That adaptation worked. It helped you function. It helped you succeed. It helped you stay regulated. But it came at a cost. You may feel emotionally tired without knowing why. You may feel disconnected from your own desires. You may feel unsure of who you are beyond what you do. Because when emotional reflection is missing in childhood, identity forms quietly, without witnesses. You became who you needed to be, not who you felt. There is often a grief here that is hard to name. Not grief for something that happened, but grief for something that did not. The conversations that never took place. The comfort that was never offered. The emotional presence that was never modeled. It is a quiet grief. Easy to dismiss. Easy to minimize. But it lives in the body. This is sometimes called a father wound, but not in a dramatic sense. Not a wound caused by harm, but a space shaped by absence. You were not broken. You were adjusting. Your nervous system learned to stay regulated without emotional input. That is not weakness. That is intelligence. If this felt familiar, you are not alone here. This space exists for that quiet recognition. This is Mind Within Mind, and you are welcome to return whenever you need a moment of understanding. You may be listening to this and feeling very still. Not emotional, not overwhelmed, just quiet. That is often how this kind of understanding lands. It does not arrive with strong feelings. It arrives with recognition, a slow sense of something clicking into place. You might notice your body relaxing slightly, or your thoughts becoming less loud. Nothing needs to happen right now. There is no reaction required. This is simply a moment of seeing your experience more clearly, and sometimes that alone is enough for now. If this feels subtle, that makes sense. Emotional absence is quiet, so its impact is quiet too. There are no dramatic memories attached to it, no clear moments to point at, just a long stretch of learning to be okay on your own. Many people live their entire lives without ever naming this. They just carry the weight silent. So if this feels new, or slightly relieving, or even confusing, that is normal. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply noticing something that was always there. You do not need to do anything with this understanding. You do not need to change yourself, or confront anyone, or search for answers tonight. Let this awareness sit gently, like a light left on in a quiet room. You can return to it when you are ready. And if you ever need a space where this kind of quiet understanding exists, you already know where to find it. You are not alone in this experience, and you never were. You may notice that after listening to all of this, nothing feels urgent. There is no sudden clarity, no strong emotion, just a quiet awareness. And that is often how real understanding shows up. Not as a breakthrough, but as a soft shift inside. Something loosens. Something feels less heavy. You do not need to name it. You can simply let it be here for a moment. Many people never get language for experiences like this. They just assume this is how life feels. So if this video gave you even a small sense of recognition, that matters. It means something inside you was seen. You do not have to carry everything quietly tonight. You can rest here for a moment. And when you are ready, you can come back. You are always welcome in this space.